Finally tonight, Rapping Rap. This fall, Charlene Hunter-Gault told us the story of one minister's campaign to eliminate violent and suggestive lyrics from rap music. Now his campaign has won over some key players in the music business, and Charlene updates our story.
When I die, there'll be bullets and gun smoke. You don't like my lifestyle? I'm rolling with the New Jack crew, and I'm a hustler.
That's what's called gangster rap. Hardcore, street-tough lyrics of Los Angeles-based groups like Ice-T and Niggers with Attitude, or NWA. Their angry style, with its racial slurs, deliberately shocking lyrics, and brutal images of life in South Central LA, have stirred controversy even as they have sent rap sales soaring.
I'm a nigga in America, and that much I flunk. When I see what I like, yo, I take what I want. I'm not the only one, that's why I'm not bitter. Cause everybody is a nigga to a nigga.
Ice-T's single, Cop Killer, even sparked a national protest. But cops were not the only objects of derision. Women were too. More controversy was caused by the frequent use of words like bitch and whore. Still, gangster rap continues to sell. This song by Dr. Dre was one of 1993's top-selling albums. Meanwhile, some gangster rappers seem to be living out their violent lyrics. Snoop Doggy Dogg was indicted for murder, and Tupac Amaru Shakur for shooting two policemen and sexually assaulting a 20-year-old woman. To its supporters, gangster rap is a form of social protest, a kind of street theater, the heartbeat of urban America. But to its critics, it's simply an attempt to manipulate racist stereotypes for profit, to sell records.
We strongly believe that it is our Christian, moral, and social responsibility to speak out against evil forces.
It is that opposition that is creating the first real backlash to the music, a backlash born in the same place that gave birth to rap, the black community. Recently, opponents of hardcore rap gathered at New York City's Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem to say enough is enough.
It is not all right for our black male children to grow up and be drug dealers, gang bashers, or stick-up kids. But your negative lyrics and videos are telling them that it's all right.
Many of those who came to protest were primarily middle-class adults, educated working people, and parents who were insulted by the negative stereotypes of blacks portrayed in the rap lyrics.
But negative rap is a slap in our faces. It lets everybody know to a certain extent that we as black people must have low self-esteem, no respect for ourselves or anyone else, and we just don't care who we hurt as long as we're making the dollar.
I've had to endure that ugly N-word for some 400 years now, and enough is enough. Black women have been the objects of too much violence. They've been the objects of too much abuse and too much misuse, and enough is enough.
The protest was organized by Abyssinian Baptist pastor Reverend Calvin Butts. Reverend Butts argues that he is not against all rap, just that which denigrates blacks through words and images. That rap, he says, casts a shadow on all blacks.
This is not a place, as one young woman stood up and said once, where I hear people being called bitches and whores around every corner and MFs. It's not. It's not like that in Oakland. It's not like that in L.A. There is some of it, but the world must not understand that that is who we are. We are not that.
We will not stand for the vile, ugly, low, grime, abusive, and rough music.
Until now, most blacks in leadership positions have refrained from criticizing such a popular form of black expression and protest. When Reverend Butts finally spoke out, it was clear outside the church that he had struck a nerve. The streets of Harlem came alive with debate in a way not heard since the protest era of the 60s.
You all can do better, and you ought to do better. I think that goes for everybody. That goes for everybody. I ask you, person, we are embracing white culture. You all are not talking to one another. You're talking past one another.
Because she never listened.
No minds were changed, but the issue was now out in the open, and people were debating it as never before.
I'm here because I'm outraged at the denigration of black women. And as a father, as a son, my mother, my sisters, our wives, our girlfriends have been denigrated, and these are against the values of our community.
Others argued that if Reverend Butts was going after anyone, it should have been the record companies themselves, that negative rappers were merely telling it like it is.
We know what's right, we know what's wrong, and music is not the killer, it's not the ill. The ill is the streets that we are forced to live like rats on. The ill is the projects we are forced to live in.
We're coming from our community. We are not talking bad things like bang, bang, shoot 'em up because we want to. This is what we live. I would love to talk about blue skies and apple pies, but I can't. That's not where I live. I live here where I see babies having babies. I see pregnant mothers using drugs, and this is what I talk about.
Only a few blocks away, in a very different atmosphere, teenagers were also talking about rap music.
Come one, come all, except the Haitians with the hips. Though you're sailing for your life, the question is who really gives up.
This is a rap workshop at New York's Riverside Church. Here, another minister, the Reverend Mariah Britton, is taking a different approach, trying to use rap as a positive force to develop the writing talents of these teenagers. These young men and women don't use obscene language or condone violence in their own lyrics, but they echoed the arguments of many of those who defended rap during Reverend Butts' protests.
I think, like, the language used by rappers just pretty much reflects how people feel in life. So you're pretty much just saying whatever comes to mind and how you feel. And if you feel like cursing because of the situation you see, that just happens.
Like Jay said, it's just a reflection of the times. This is harsh times now. So there's going to be a harsh music. So if you don't understand it, you know, you're not really understanding what today is all about.
To these aspiring rappers, the negative messages in some songs are no worse than in other entertainment media.
But what about your integrity? What about what you stand for as a human being? Are you swayed more by the desire to make money and to sell the records? Or are you led by your sense of integrity?
Bottom line is it's entertainment. In the same way you have to, like, that'd be like asking an actor or like asking Sylvester Stallone, well, how do you really feel about the way you're portraying people in Vietnam as just, you know, bloodthirsty killers and going around shooting people? Probably wouldn't have a second thought about that because, you know, he doesn't really probably know the first thing about Vietnam.
It's been suggested that what appeals to both black and white teenagers is hardcore rap's anti-establishment, anti-authoritarian messages. But some psychologists suggest that the appeal for white males, the group that buys the most CDs, goes beyond teenage rebelliousness. They argue that the appeal to that group stems from the validation of their worst stereotypes about black people. For the congregation of Abyssinian Baptist Church, that notion fuels much of the drive against gangster rap.
I understand frustration, but brother, if your back is burdened by the whip of white racism and you're taking it out on the black woman, then your anger and your frustration, though it may be legitimate, it is misguided and misdirected.
Reverend Butts hopes that protests like these and the media coverage they generate will eventually make an impression on the rappers and cause them to change their negative vocabulary.
We're not saying that they can't make it. They have every right in the world to make it. What we're saying is that we hope to create a climate in our community that we believe once existed, where this kind of thing is so intolerable that people would dare not suggest that a black woman is a bitch or any woman is a female dog.
It's Triple the Music, BLS 107.5 in the company of John Robinson in the Midday Mix. Welcome to...
Reverend Butts' message seems to be getting through, if not to the rappers, at least to the radio stations. The leading black radio station in New York, WBLS, recently announced that it will not be playing music containing derogatory, profane, or violent lyrics. station's general manager is Dave Lampel. I talked with him recently about his station's decision. Tell us why WBLS decided to take Gangsta Rap off the air.
The words, the way people were talking about women, talking about killing gays, talking about violence and using guns as a method of everyday life. It just seemed so preposterous to continue this policy. And unfortunately, this was impregnated throughout a lot of the music that was coming out, even some of the most popular stuff. Artists who didn't have to do it were starting now to do this as a regular routine.
What motivated the decision? Was it some kind of studies you had seen, or was it discussions within the organization, or reaction from the community? What motivated it?
People just got so frustrated with the fact that more and more records were coming out with this. Our choices as to what to play on the air and put on the air were fewer and fewer and fewer. And the feeling was, you know, since we had become a company that led the way in black ownership and broadcasting, we led the way on several important policy fights in Washington at the FCC and other areas, that it's time for us to also lead the way and issue a statement of policy about internally how we are going to deal with this onslaught of music, if you will, and also, more importantly, use this as kind of a bully pulpit to the industry to say, hey, look, we are a principal operator in this business, and we want it to stop.
Is it because there's something you discern welling up in the community?
We got a lot of letters from listeners who would talk about what's on BET or on the videos and music television. We got critical about the kind of words. On many stations around the country, not on ours, but on many stations, you could literally hear records where there are things bleeped out or sentences turned around. And what really the stations were doing was going in and editing this thing with a razor blade and taking the objectionable words out. And people would hear a record. They'd go out to the store now and buy it, thinking what they heard on the air is what, in fact, they're going to get. When they get home, they take it out of the plastic, they put it on the CD, and it's the most vile litany of horrible words and things that you've ever heard. And this is what was happening in our industry, and we were observing this, we were seeing what was coming into the station in the form of people who wanted us to play these records, and that's what really was the base of the policy.
Many of the critics of what you and others have done say that you're dealing with the wrong part of the problem, that you should be addressing the root causes of violence in the community as opposed to taking music off the airwaves that is simply a reflection of their reality.
First of all, I understand that people say that, and art is always got to be a cutting-edge medium to express some of the things in ways that we may not be so comfortable with. I'm not sure that it means that a public radio station like WBLS has to be the conveyor of that. I mean, people can buy this product, they can hear it, they can see it in a lot of other ways. We're not trying to say that the product should never be out there. We're simply saying we're not going to play the game of somehow implying that this is mass public appeal acceptable stuff, that the concept of calling somebody niggers and bitches and hoes and all these kinds of words are typical routine ways that people should be talking with one another. When I was a kid growing up in Harlem, to say something about your mother or to say something about your sister, just even if it was something halfway off the wall, would have gotten you slaughtered. Today we have people walking around calling women and putting their hands on women and degrading them and beating them and shooting them and all kinds of other things. And it's almost like this is a new factor in my community.
Is it more than just taking the music off of your air? Are you on a campaign? Are you lobbying other stations to follow your lead?
Lots of other stations have already gotten in touch with us. I mean, obviously, our chairman, Pierre Sutton, is president of the National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters. That is an organization that at its next meeting, as they have at past meetings, will increase their stand on this. There are a lot of other black stations that have already stated policies of different types, and hopefully there will be a unity of all those policies.
A lot of non-black stations have already contacted us to ask the details of how we're doing this and have subscribed personally themselves to the same policy. I think it's not a question of popularity. It's a question of right or wrong. I think that it's an important idea whose time is now. I think a lot of broadcasters who figure they can be successful by going down the wrong road are going to have to reevaluate that position.
Lampel and those who oppose rap's tough lyrics believe that if radio stations stop playing the songs, the record companies will have a lot less incentive to produce them, because without airplay, there will be fewer sales.